Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining Texans for the Arts for this Wednesday Texans for the Arts Advocacy Action Update. I'm not sure what the acronym is, but we're delighted to have you here today. We started this weekly series to just take a snippet of important news coming up in the advocacy realm to provide education and opportunity for you all to get involved. Today, we are going to be talking about getting ready for the 87th legislative session. Texans for the Arts is a statewide arts advocacy organization whose mission is to secure, protect, and grow the public investment in the arts and to be a developer of policy that supports the larger arts and culture sector. We are membership supported. We thank our members all around the state for their investment in our work. We work at the municipal, the state, and the federal level, again, to secure public resources for the arts. Today, we're going to be joined by our government relations specialist and lobbyist, Shannon Gangurdy. We've worked with Shannon now for one session. This is going into our second session, and really delighted to have her. She's got 17 years of experience in working in the Texas government and just insights into the legislative process, into budgeting, and her work has been really an important part of our work at the state level in advocacy and lobbying. So I'm going to turn it over to Shannon to talk about getting ready for the 87th, what to expect, and a little bit about what Texans for the Arts legislative agenda includes. Shannon?
Great. Thank you, Anne. Appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to be here today. I know we've got just a short time, so I'm just going to get right in and go through things pretty quickly. I'm going to start with just some of the basics of the legislative session. So the legislature meets for 140 days every odd numbered year. So we're coming upon the odd numbered year, and we will start in January. On January 12th will be the first day of the legislative session, and the last day of legislative session will be May the 31st. After session ends, the governor will have a 20-day period to veto any bills and or also do any line item vetoes to the budget. And that will end on June the 20th. And then September 1 of 2021 is when most of the bills that are passed next session will become effective. And it's also when the budget that will be passed this next legislative session will begin. Important to note, hopefully it won't be necessary, but the governor can call special sessions. Once session is over, and they last for 30 days, and they are specific to whatever issue the governor puts on the call. And if, for example, the budget doesn't pass, which is the only bill that technically has to pass, if the budget doesn't pass, there will certainly be a special session on the budget because we can't operate as a government come September without a budget implemented. So those are just some of the bigger dates. Real quick, I'm just going to talk about the latest election cycle and its impact on the Texas legislature. A lot of attention on the federal election, but there was an election as well in Texas. The Texas House has 150 members. They all serve for 2-year terms. So every member was up this last election cycle. Prior to the election, there was an 83 Republican majority to 67 Democrat in the House. There was a lot of conversation around the elections, a lot of attention. And when all was said and done, the House will very likely be in the exact same position, 83 Republicans in the majority and 67 Democrats. The Texas Senate has 31 members. They serve for 4-year terms, and so they split. Every other cycle is when a Senate seat will be up. And the Senate prior to the elections was a Republican majority as well, 19 Republicans to 12 Democrats. The Republicans lost 1 seat. An incumbent Republican, Senator Flores, lost his seat to Representative Gutierrez. And so you now have an 18 Republican majority to a 13 Democrat Senate. One of the big issues that will potentially be tackled this next legislative session is redistricting. So I just told you that the House runs every 2 years and the Senate runs every 4 years. But every 10 years, after a census is conducted, the legislature is tasked with redrawing the lines so that every vote counts, right? So you have different population growth and I guess reductions in certain areas. And so they redraw the lines. And so once all the lines are redrawn, sorry about that. Once the lines are redrawn, every senator will then be up for election. And so after this legislative session. The next election cycle, all 31 senators will have to rerun for the new redrawn seats. Every House member will be up again. And then our statewide elected officials will mostly be up for election. Our governor, lieutenant governor, comptroller, attorney general will all be up next election cycle. So watch for, how those dynamics will impact the legislative session. The other issue that will be, as I talked about before, that will be discussed and has to be acted on is the budget. And so when we left last session, the comptroller does something called certifying the budget. So he certified, Comptroller Hager, when the legislature left, that when all the bills were paid for fiscal year 2021 biennium, which is the biennium we're currently in, that the legislature would have about $3 billion left in the bank. We would have a $3 billion surplus. And as most of the viewers are aware, or all the viewers are aware, coronavirus has come and it has impacted the economy in Texas beyond what we had expected. Additionally, we've had oil prices reduce, which has also had an impact on the revenues that Texas collects. And so because of those two, main factors, the comptroller came out this last summer and said, okay, I told you there was $3 billion in the bank, but actually now we're going to be short $4.5 billion. That's a big difference. That's a $7.5 billion swing. So, that's not good. That's not where you want to be going into a legislative session. But what, a little bit of good news, a few months later, the comptroller came out and said, okay, maybe it's not 4.5, maybe it's something a little bit less. Maybe it's $1 billion less than that, or maybe it's even less than that. And so when we come into session in January, the comptroller will issue a new revenue estimate. And so we'll get a better sense at that time. One of the things that the comptroller has said was not included in the 4.5 billion shortfall number was additional federal dollars received to the state for the coronavirus relief fund. The state received, a little bit over $6 billion specifically for the state to shore up expenses from the coronavirus relief fund. Smaller counties and cities with populations of 500,000 or less was awarded, or I guess granted out, another $1.8 billion, which potentially could come back to the state if it's not all awarded out. And so there are some federal dollars that, depending on how they're spent, could help, lessen the deficit that we are potentially facing. So we know we're going into a tight budget cycle. And we understand that. And so as we go to come up with Texans for the Arts legislative agenda, we kept that in mind. And so last session, it was not as bad of it wasn't as bad as a budget cycle. And we were very happy and successful in getting $10 million in the budget for cultural district grants through the Texas Commission on the Arts, and an additional $250,000 in grants through the Texas Commission on the Arts on arts in the military. And so one of our top priorities is protecting those resources in the budget and making sure that those don't get reduced. So that's kind of our number one, is protecting what we've done last session. And then hotel occupancy tax, which is more on the state level, a statutory conversation, protecting local communities' ability to use hotel occupancy tax on the arts, and that doesn't erode in any way. And then we're also going to look for opportunities to, if there are opportunities within the budget process for some relief due to coronavirus. We believe and have let the legislature know that the arts have been disproportionately impacted by COVID. The arts were some of the first organizations shut down. They were some of the last organizations to come back on, or they're going to be some of the last organizations to come back online. And so if there is any relief provided, we certainly will push to be at the table and make sure that our story is told, especially, our belief is that when things start to get back to normal, whenever that is, that the arts community is going to help bring the economy back. We're going to get people back in restaurants, get people back in hotels. The arts helps kind of fuel the economy. And so we need to do everything we can to support the arts industries so that they're there and that they exist to get the economy back online. So with that, I went really quickly. I know we're short on time, so if I've gone too quickly, and let me know, and we can go a little bit deeper in some of these topics. But I am going to pass it back to you because I know you want to talk a little bit about Arts Advocacy Day and what to expect next week.
Great, thank you. So before we jump into that, I just want to share, and thank you, Shannon, for giving that great overview. Regarding the hotel occupancy tax, a major project that we have undertaken and launched this last October is called the Hotel Occupancy Tax Toolkit, generously funded by the Houston Endowment. This toolkit is an online resource, www.hottoolkit.com. And in it is a really encyclopedic depth in, or diving into the Chapter 351 of the Texas Tax Code, the Municipal Hotel Occupancy Tax, about how it works, how the funds are collected, how the funds are distributed to the municipality, how a municipality can distribute those out, how you as an arts organization or arts leader can get involved in learning more about the hotel tax, and how hoteliers can also learn about it, and municipal leaders. So that's a really important tool that we now have. And as Shannon said, that really puts us, we hope, at the table with the hotel industry and with the municipal leadership and the CVBs and the conventions when people do start to travel again, when the vaccine is readily available and we see an increase in hotel tax. We want to be at the table, ensure that the arts and culture are invested in through those resources. As Shannon said, that's really what's going to help us refuel and restart our Texas economy, and also our social sector, and how the arts make us feel as human beings in these really challenging times. Next week, and then coming up in January, we will be talking next Wednesday from 4 to 4:15, a little bit longer, is to kick off our Texas Arts Advocacy Day. Texas Arts Advocacy Day has been happening for the last any number of sessions. It happens again for in the years we have the Texas legislative session, so in the odd numbered years. And it's really about two things. One, it's about ensuring that our legislators understand the importance of why the arts, what the arts bring to our communities, and also to have an impact on legislative decisions, and to ensure that our legislators support the issues that are really important to us to fund the arts. Again, the TCA cultural districts, protecting the hotel tax, and other initiatives that may come up, arts and education issues, arts in the military, any way that the arts can foster and support the economy and our society. How Arts Advocacy Days works this year, it's virtual. The Capitol is not open right now. It's not open to the public. Staff and legislators can be in there, but we do not have access to the physical space yet. So we're going to do a virtual Arts Advocacy Day. It's going to be 2 parts. On Tuesday, January 26th, we're going to do a session on how do you set up a legislative visit? What goes on in a legislative visit? What do I communicate? How do I communicate? So we'll be doing a training on that front, and also a training around getting involved with journalism. How do you write a letter to the editor? How do you write an op-ed piece? How do you put out your story on social media? So we'll be doing that on January 26th. And then 2 weeks later, in which case you've got 2 weeks to set up your legislative visits with your legislators, we will be convening on Tuesday, February 9th, with more training about our statistics. We work with the Texas Cultural Trust, and they develop their arts and economic impact study that we use when we meet with our legislators. So we'll be drawing from that. We'll have other guest speakers. We'll have artists that are visiting, and that's really a full immersion into everything you need to know about meeting with your legislator and the content. We send you off on those meetings, and we'll end the week with a happy hour, a virtual happy hour, to really learn more about how your visits went. So this is about you establishing a relationship with your legislator, understanding their interests in the arts and culture, ensuring they understand your stories and the data and what makes the arts so important in your community, and you hope in their community as an elected official. So that's a whirlwind introduction to the 87th session. We are looking forward to it. We really don't know what it's going to look like in terms of public access to the building or to hearings, whether any sort of office visits are going to be available. That all remains to be seen. But everybody who's very deeply engaged in the legislative process, we're all in this together. We're, how the budget pans out is of paramount importance. On the same line, how the federal money coming in, if there's a successful federal package of COVID relief right now, that will have a huge impact as well as we approach the legislative session. So I think that's it. Without any further ado, we are always happy to answer any questions that you have. And you can email info@texansforthearts.com if you have questions that are unanswered. Otherwise, you can sign up on our newsletter there, which I encourage you to do, so that you can learn more about Arts Advocacy Day and become an active arts advocate yourself. So without any further ado, I thank Shannon for chiming in today and teaching us a little bit about the 87th session. And I applaud all of you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 4 o'clock to learn more about Arts Advocacy Day.